everyone, and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host, Lei Xing, and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. If you enjoy this room, please help us get the word out to other enthusiasts. And of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li, and I am the Managing Director at Sino-Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. This is your co-host Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode number 107. Reminder, we're 40 days away from Auto Shanghai 2023. Have you made your plans?
I was kind of waiting on your confirmation, and now that you've been approved, I am going to try to book everything tomorrow. So.
Oh wow, okay.
Did you book yet?
No.
Okay.
I got my visa. So,
but you suck. You're only going to be there like a week, right?
No, I mean I got one.
No, but that's the
one thing taken care of. So
that was the most important thing. So
yeah. So wow, the most interesting news out of the China EV AV mobility space.
两会.
The 两会, yes, the two sessions, but the key word of this year so far is price war. And I think price war is an understatement.
Understatement. I was just going to say the same thing.
To describe what has transpired ever since Tesla cut prices roughly 2 months ago. You know, we can start off there. Obviously, the two sessions, some of the chatter highlights, what's been talked about is in some way closely associated with not the price war, but the general consumption environment, which seems to be facing some headwinds.
I have an opinion on that.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to ask you about, the two sessions. What did you find interesting? Anything that stood out for you? And I'll give you, I'll talk my perspective.
So, as Tu Lao 中国 or Lao Beijing, right? We always have been taught or learned anyways, to read in between the lines, not only what's being said, but look to why potentially it's being said. And so what we do know is that Xi Jinping never would call out the United States by name. That happened this time. And so I look at that as the economy is worse off than initially thought. And like any good salesperson, they're trying to take the attention away from the economy. And how do you do that? By rallying around a national, something that you can unify the nation, and that's bashing on the United States a bit. So I think that the economy in China is slowly recovering, but in order for it to take the trajectory that the Chinese government wants it to, the foreign investors and the foreign players are going to have to cooperate. That became very difficult with 3 years of restrictions. And so not only are Chinese consumers gun shy, but foreign investors and foreign businesses are gun shy. So the next few months will be very important for the rest of 2023 and 2024 moving forward to see, because remember, they've only forecasted a 5% growth rate, which is the smallest forecast in 3 decades or something like that. So even they're acknowledging that it's going to take some time for the economy to recover and get back towards a trajectory that we're used to pre-COVID. And I'll segue this into the price war is pointing to how weak the market is a little bit. So,
there's basically what you said. There's another war going on. It's the Cold War.
Yes.
Between the China and the U.S. And that was pretty evident whether it was she or the new foreign minister, Qin Gang, I mean, that was a carefully scripted dunking on the U.S. basically. My goodness, I watched a live stream. I mean, he was pretty charismatic, by the way, but obviously, so that's the tone that we're hearing, and as you said, it's hiding a little bit of what's been going on in terms of, let's say, the economy. When you talk about the economy, one thing I thought that stood out to me was consumption, and consumption in particular of the four, let's say, the pillars, which are autos, home appliances, home furnishings, and food and restaurant. These account for a quarter of consumption, everything in China. So less than 5 minutes into Li Keqiang, the Chinese premier's work report.
The soon-to-be ex-premier.
Yes, this Saturday he'll be ex, but he mentions the incentives that were in place to spur automobile consumption. So I thought that stood out to me. And then the second one was when they had this ministers facing the press. The Minister of Industry and Information Technology mentions NEVs.
So let me stop you there for a second, Lei, because I want to make sure we emphasize this point. SOEs and up and down the supply chain, these companies that are effectively SOEs, their job is not necessarily to be profitable. Their job is to keep people working, because when people aren't working, they start thinking about things and they start complaining and they start thinking about how bad life is. So the Chinese government does not want that. And what happened in the past, they would build a lot and they would export it. But now they're seeing that they need to switch over to a domestic consumption model and not have to rely on exports. So that's going to be a painful pivot.
Yep.
So please continue. I just wanted to make sure that people realize that SOEs, their job is not to be so profitable, right?
Sure. We'll talk about one particular SOE in a moment. But what I was getting to was, I'm looking at these signals, and these signals have been coming ever since the beginning of the year from multiple departments on the importance of stabilizing consumption, and particularly vehicle autos, not only NEV consumption. So I am looking for that visible hand to come out.
Yes.
But we don't have the details yet. It's all been this price war going on the side. And so
the price war is saving the sector from bottoming out.
Yes. But what I was looking for is really a actual, let's say, a statement or something that to the effect, okay, this is what we're going to do to drive up consumption. We haven't seen it come out. Maybe it's being discussed. But what has transpired, I think, I tweeted last night, right, in my 20 plus years of covering the market, I haven't seen this severe, the price cuts that have taken place in both the NEVs and the ICEs that have taken place and that are coming. And I was thinking about, this is a little bit surprising to me as well, but I was thinking about some of the reasons behind this was this, I tweeted again earlier today, this whiplash from the ending of NEV subsidies, the national subsidies, and the purchase tax incentives that were valid for the second half of 2022. That kind of pushed up the boats a bit, if you will.
Yep.
And if you remember, the China's opening up was a wild card in either positively or negatively affecting vehicle sales. And there's another wild card factor, which is the enforcement of China's 6B emissions in July. And the latest rumor I've heard is these premium brands are about to cut prices to drive off those inventory that don't meet the 6B emission standards. So rumors going around that you're going to see 200,000 renminbi Audis, Mercedes, BMWs come later this year.
That's already happening with BMW. They are reducing price by 100,000 RMB. Did you see that?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I saw that.
Oh my god,
BYD is the latest, right, on their Zone Plus.
8,000 RMB,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But still,
I think that's more of a gesture than an actual, move to aggressively protect their share.
yeah. So these price cuts, and I mean, quotes, price cuts, have come in all shapes and forms and sizes. Right? Mustang Mach-E, one example. The Citroen C6, 90,000 RMB off. And some of it, I mentioned the state-owned SOE, and now it's Dongfeng Motor Group. Their group sales were down big time in the first 2 months. All of their joint ventures, Nissan, Honda, PSA,
Right.
sales are down. That's why you saw the fire sale in Hubei province, right? That was huge. So these again are not created equal. The price cuts, we've said this quite a few times, and I put a hashtag drop to survive, meaning right now forget about profitability. Right now volume and is king, survival is king. So we're gonna see some players really,
They got to keep these factories going.
yeah. And you notice that before the two sessions, the chairman of Dongfeng Motor Group, he was relieved of his duties,
Yeah.
and the chairman of FAW Group also left. This is like huge changes in China because they're two centrally administered state-owned automaker. So lots of things going on that's putting the start of this year even I think worse, or the sentiment, whether it's the China US or whether it's the price war, a lot worse than we probably expected starting off the year.
It's
So
it never ceases to amaze me how I am constantly amazed at what happens in the China market.
yeah, and the going into sales a little bit, the CPCA sales February was just 440,000 retail. That's roughly half of the peak I think that was reached in
December.
December. My fingers are still crossed that this is the consensus is that starting off the year will be tough, but at a certain point in time this year, I think for the market to get to 10 million units, we're gonna have to see a million unit month for that to happen. That's my expectation.
Probably a couple of them.
Couple of them, yeah, exactly. So while we can't really jump to conclusions, it is quite tough for some brands and some companies. So Dongfeng Motor Group, and if you saw the Great Wall Motor, they published their numbers. Every brand was down. Way brand was way down.
Well, generally speaking, with the exception of, I would say, the premium brands, every ICE nameplate should be down. I think so.
Yeah,
And so I've had these conversations over the last several weeks with people that think they know what they're talking about. And for the legacy automakers in Germany and in the United States. And I just don't think they weigh the impact of the China market enough on an OEM's a legacy OEM's global strategy. So you can't be a global automaker. They argue that, oh, GM has Europe, Ford has Europe, so China doesn't matter as much.
what are you talking about? GM owns China's NEV market with the Wuling.
Yeah. Yeah, right on, right on. $5,000, $5,000 of the $300 worth of profit they get from each car they sell, right? So,
And I tell you, even the Wuling Mini EV is confronting some headwinds because I think they've gone through that cycle of continuing at a high pace. And now you're seeing the Geely Pandas or these type of competitors coming in. So, and we see Li Auto in the lead. At any moment they could tank.
yeah, I was really surprised about the L9 being ahead by so much. That was the one thing that really surprised me because the GLS, the X7 are doing terrible compared to that. So,
Li Xiang got to figure it out. So he knows his customers.
And I tweeted that we're talking the L9 starts at $70,000 US. So these aren't, so selling 7,000 of them in a month is a pretty significant feat.
Yeah, and so they have a lot of tailwind behind them.
And Neo 6,000 ET6s, you gotta be in the tens. You gotta be in the tens. ET5, sorry. You gotta be in the tens. I don't know why they're only getting to 6,000.
I think we're seeing some of these new models being listed on the catalogs. So the ET5 Touring, the Xpeng G6, the Xpeng P7i is launching tomorrow. So you kind of worry, right? You kind of, how are these going to fare on the market?
Well, they might get, depending on how attractive the features are, they might get a spike for a month or two, and then the market kind of settles. So
Yeah.
I just don't know the pace at which the market is moving, how long this can continue, because people are going to run, or companies, the startups specifically, are going to run out of cash for these feature updates and the marketing expenses that they're driving into just trying to maintain sales.
What I heard from what Wang Fengying, the new president of Xpeng, what she did was, one, she delayed. So these media test drives, they asked these media to post these videos later than expected. So right before the launch. And two, she basically asked the move that you're going to have the P7i and the P7 on sale at the same time. So she just said, we're going to just going to have the P7i. So some of the things that she did after arriving.
Do you think that, so longer range, newer silicon for infotainment and ADAS with the Snapdragon and the Orin, they have LiDAR optional on the P7i. Do you think, because cosmetically it doesn't look that much different, so do you think that's going to move the needle?
Well, I think the P7i is the, whatchamacallit, not the Halo car, but it's the signature
Yeah.
car, I think, for Xpeng. So,
well, it's supposed to be the G9.
I think it still accounts for a big portion of Xpeng sales.
Yes.
So it has to, I don't know, be a triple if not a home run. But I'm telling you, I don't want to be in Wang's position right now.
The good thing is, Lei, you and I will be able to speak with all of our contacts at all of these companies in about 40 days. So, yeah. I think their first questions are going to be, what do you guys think? How's everything working out? I'm more curious about how they're doing, whether they feel confident, whether they feel anxious. There's got to be a bit of anxiety on that next launch. It's always anxiety on that next launch, right? Whatever that next launch is. So,
after these 3 or 4 years, it's starting to feel like 2019 all over again, because Neo was in trouble in 2019, and some of the other competitors are becoming the Neos of 2019 in 2023. And that's why I was saying that we're going to see quite a few losers this year if things don't turn around.
And what I did want to, you had just reminded me of this, because our good friend Ed Carson, our good Twitter friend Ed Carson, I think he tweeted something about Li Auto doing so well. And, I kind of thought through the difference in strategy between Li Auto and Neo, because Li Auto is completely focused on the domestic market, and Neo, they have two main things that I thought off the top of my head that are very different, right? Their focus, Li Auto's focus is completely domestic,
Yep.
where Neo is, we're going to expand into, a handful of countries and swapping stations, and then manufacturing complexity, and two sedans, one coupe SUV, a large SUV, a medium-sized SUV, two large SUVs and a medium-sized SUV. So it's pretty complex, and it's not just an EV startup thing. You saw GM is struggling building the Lyric in the United States. So the legacy automakers have this reputation of being manufacturing gurus, but I don't care if it's a manufacturing issue. I don't care if it's a supply chain issue. The legacies have hundreds of people dedicated to making sure those plants are working and running efficiently. These startups don't have that level of concentration at a departmental level in sourcing, in manufacturing, in supply chain and logistics. So you expect that it's a larger struggle for the EV startups. But for GM and Ford to say that we can't get enough supplies or we can't figure out the battery cell and the pack and manufacture in mass production quantities is kind of a, I mean, if I was a shareholder, I'd be pretty upset.
So Xiaomi CEO Lei Jun, he shared some updates on the Mi EV. And come to think of it, it might be a blessing in disguise that they're not competing in the market right now.
Oh, I think Jidu and Xiaomi are like super lucky.
So yeah, I mean, I wonder how they think about what's going on currently, because
But Xiaomi is a bit more of a wild card because of the manufacturing uncertainty that they have. Jidu Robo One is using the SEA platform, is using Geely as the manufacturer of record. So
yeah.
we're talking they have a veteran helping them launch their first product. So I tweeted because I think yeah, Lei Jun said everything's going great, right? I was like, yeah, it's going great until you had to build a bunch of them, right? So,
Same, yeah. Doing it at scale, that's a hard part. And then at the same time, BYD is teasing this fashion brand, right? And the BZ3, right, was launched at a cheaper price point. That's in effect a price cut
yes.
with BYD reputation at stake. And then I thought what was also interesting was Kia to announce their this China NEV strategy in 2023.
So I was looking at global sales for 2022. Toyota was number one at 10.4 million or something like that. Let me see if I can find my notes. Bear with me here. Toyota was 10.4, Volkswagen's 8.2.
A something, yeah.
And GM has not announced for global. They've only announced for the United States. I think they're at 2.4 or something like that. Hyundai, 6.8.
Hyundai Kia.
Yes, Hyundai Kia. Renault Nissan, 5.2. Stellantis has not announced. Hyundai did this 6.8 without the China market, basically. So that's an amazing number. Like third, fourth, fifth, and sixth place of global largest automaker by manufacturing. Man, that's like, that's pretty impressive for Hyundai. Because if they were to sell, 1 million, 2 million cars, they'd be right up there with Volkswagen then, right? So I agree with you in your tweet. I don't know how they're ever going to recover the China market. I just don't know.
Yeah. The Koreans just face a different type of challenge.
They face prejudice.
Yeah, if not more challenge than the others.
Which is a shame because it seems that their ICE lineup and their NEV lineup is really strong, really strong.
I'm a Hyundai owner and I love my Hyundai, so what the heck?
And if we look at Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, Renault, Nissan in China, the Chinese government doesn't have to make things harder. These guys are shooting themselves in the foot all by themselves. And if they can't turn it around really quickly, it's going to be Tesla as the only real foreign automaker in the next 5 to 7 years that commands any type of real share. And we know that Volkswagen, by sheer force, because of the manufacturing footprint that they have in China, that they'll sell a lot in the millions. But will they be desirable vehicles? I don't know. Not if they can't turn it around in the next 24 to 36 months from a design, feature, software, development, and bug-free product. It's just going to be really difficult. You see how brutal it is right now. Holy cow.
Yeah, so what's been happening in the Chinese market is this market is moving away from a first-time buyer market to a trade-in additional purchases market. So what's happening is even the existing owners of these foreign volume brands, when they used to trade up to these foreign premium brands, now they're trading over to the Chinese brands, which are going high end anyways. And these Chinese high ends are taking away the market share from the foreign high end brands. That's been what's happening. Yeah. Li Auto is the best example.
I think you completely agree with me, but you're too nice to say this. German legacy auto was way too overconfident and pompous that any Chinese manufacturer would be able to match them.
Oh, I agree. I agree with you 200%.
And so the amount of, what's that right word I'm trying to say? It's arrogance. The amount of arrogance that they had about how their products are just plain superior to anything that China could ever design, engineer, and manufacture. It just bugged me. It just irked me.
That brings up the changeover of Mercedes sales organization now being headed by a Chinese. I think it's not NEV related, but I think it's very significant that this is like the first time that's happened for at least for the ABBs.
It needs to happen. It needs to happen.
Yeah, but
it's just like me saying a few weeks ago that I've never seen a car company or any company transform into a technology company by just promoting from within without bringing in that expertise. So the same thing, if you're a foreigner and you get swooped in every 5 years and you get, or a foreign manager anyways, and you get swooped in every 5 years, you have no idea what the market is like, because what it was when you entered versus when you leave is completely different. So
yeah, ditto with what we talked about last episode with Tom Zhu of Tesla, how important he is as a high up for the entire success of Tesla.
Well, Tesla, hopefully Tom is not in charge of putting steering wheels, or he's not in charge of putting steering wheels on
2023 Model Y steering wheels falling off.
Oh my goodness, dude. Oh my goodness.
Interesting. Yeah. So one thing we wanted to discuss was another Twitter friend asked about our thoughts on Xi's comments on CATL.
Okay.
Which is also part of the chatter during 2 sessions. What do you think? Well, what's your take?
So I actually wrote about it in my newsletter, and it was the culmination of 14 years of dedication, a commitment, and an investment to turn CATL from a small regional player into the world's largest battery cell manufacturer. And so this is why Xi is very proud, or XJP, as some might call him, is very proud, because this happened in no time. But they also know that CATL's reliance on foreign brands and their ability to stay the number one battery cell manufacturer now depends on friendly foreign countries. And the last thing that Xi Jinping wants is a bunch of empty battery, or a bunch of capacity that can't be sold because of either a company out innovates them, or the foreign markets aren't accessible to them because of protectionism. Okay. But if I'm being 100% frank and transparent and honest, this is the bed that they made. So they need to sleep in it, because they only did this for 3 years, I think, Lei. That's that white list of 17 domestic battery cell manufacturers from like 2014 to 2017, I want to say. I could be totally wrong, but I think it was only 3 or 4 years. And for those that are missing a piece, in 2015 or 16, the Chinese government, they didn't say you could not buy from a foreign battery cell manufacturer.
But everybody understood it.
Yes. It was a white list of 17 battery cell manufacturers that you could buy from if you wanted to get the subsidies. They never said that you couldn't buy from a foreign, because that's when LG or SK wanted to invest and they couldn't in capacity in China. And it just so happened every single one of those 17 were a Chinese battery cell manufacturer. And so they did that for about 3 or 4 years, and then the white label or the whitelist was kind of canceled, but it did what it needed to do. It turned BYD, it turned CATL into the largest LFP battery manufacturers in the world. So
It's Chinese IRA.
and this is where it's weird because the United States is this free market champion, but and I get my European friends have made fun of the United States and tell me, and I never did anyways, but they tell me that we should never point to Europe as being this socialist region anymore. So I mean, the shoe fits, wear it, right? So
Yeah. So my read is that the Reuters article sounded more, let's say, severe than I think it actually is. So the Xinhua reported, right? I wouldn't read too much into this. I don't think there's always going to be scrutiny, right? Especially with respect to the 4 CATL deal from both China and the US. But I don't think if we're talking about, let's say, putting up some sort of sanctions or anything that extreme, as extreme as what happened to Didi. But on the CATL's part, being monopolistic, let's say, having that 37% share will always be a double-edged sword, and CATL knows well what's happening in the competitive landscape. So I don't think CATL needs a warning from XJP to better plan ahead. So I think I wouldn't read too much into it. I think it's a fair warning on XJP's part, but I wouldn't think a major scrutiny is coming that to limit CATL or anything like that. So that's my read.
I'll extend your point because right now the foreign legacies in Europe and the United States cannot fulfill their forecast without CATL and or BYD and or CALB and or Envision AESC and Goshen. So LFP is quite necessary. Now, again, by the end of this decade, sodium ion is probably going to be more popular. The dual chemistry batteries, like like an Our Next Energy, that might come into play. And so will CATL continue to be able to innovate? Or will it be only a price game? Because at 37% share, you command the price for batteries. You could lose money for 12 months to push weaker players out of the market, right? And so part of, I think, XJP's concern is also because if there's protectionism and there's overcapacity in China, they can't dump into foreign markets because we always have to look back at solar panels and steel with China, because if they go full 100% into a sector, there's a high likelihood there's going to be overinvestment and too much capacity. And so that's one of the reasons why the Chinese government is not handing out these manufacturing licenses so willy-nilly, because they're trying to avoid overcapacity in the EV sector. So I think, yeah, for the next 36 to 48 months, everything should be okay, but all bets are off after 2030 if there's new innovations and there continues to be deterioration in the relationship between the United States and China. So
yeah, so I think we covered everything, unless you have other.
You had tweeted about Faraday. Let's talk about Faraday for a second.
Well, like I said, SOP. We're gonna have to see this SOP.
They need to raise $130 million in order to get to that March 30th date, though. So
yeah, so they had this one question asked about that funding. I think what they confirmed was they needed 150 to 170 million, and they have 135 million allocated. So it looks like it should be okay. But then again, it's the end of the beginning. It's not the beginning of the end.
yes.
So end of the beginning with SOP, it's a lot harder. It doesn't get easier.
And that vehicle is super complicated.
Yeah, that's how they want to position it.
We've already seen softness in the Lucid market and the Rivian market
Yeah.
at the 80, 90,
Well,
$110,000 price point. And Faraday doesn't have Saudis backing them. So
I thought XF first earnings call as a CEO was okay. I think, yeah.
yeah, well, everything's upbeat, right? Everything's upbeat. So
Other than that, it's tough.
let's do this. We will open the room up right now for any questions, any comments, but I also wanted to go over a couple of things.
Sure.
GM just announced that they have offered every single salaried employee that has at least 5 years with the company a package to leave the company. So I think they have 58,000 employees. And, what did we talk about, or what have I said for forever? These companies are going to have to get much, much smaller if they're going to be able to compete.
Yeah.
And we're talking not 10% smaller, we're talking significantly smaller. And so that is a pretty big deal.
And not being able to produce the Honda EV and Cadillac Lyric. We talked about that, yeah.
Yeah, which is a head scratcher because those volumes aren't huge. Those volumes aren't huge to begin with, right?
Yeah, it's been a year since the Lyric SOP'd in Tennessee, I think.
Yes.
Or, yeah.
And VinFast is doing its tour. The CEO of VinFast is doing her tour for IPO. She stated in an interview that by September, they'd be the only EV maker with products in all of the market segments, A through E. So the VF9, which is the large SUV that we saw, is not great. But they, like Faraday Future, likely need that IPO to be a huge windfall for them, or they're going to be more like a Hung Chur than they are anything else. They remind me completely of Hung Chur because they've shown us all these different cars, but which one are they actually?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And the initial set of VF 6 or 7, they have reduced the price on for the initial customers in the United States, the lease price. And so they are on some shaky ground too. But that's all I had today, man.
The other thing is just the Ford's Latitude AI, and then the Argo AI guys starting up another startup.
Yes. Yes. So good for them. Good for them.
Yeah. So what? Old habits die hard. Is that how you say it?
Oh, and I attended an autonomous vehicle event a couple of days ago, and the speaker at the event is a Volkswagen Group employee working for the autonomous vehicle team. So he's doing all of the policy stuff. So he's gathering all of the requirements at the state level in the United States, all 50 of them, in order to get validation to start using autonomous. Yeah, exactly. So that must be a very, very tedious job. But anyway, so that's all I had. If no one has any questions or comments, I guess we can close the room out.
Yeah, we've been pretty efficient, I think.
Cool. Hey, thanks again, everyone, for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We will talk with you all next week.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.